Welcome to today's discussion, where we explore influence, desire, and emotional power through the lens of Machiavellian psychology. Niccolo Machiavelli is often misunderstood as a figure who encouraged manipulation, but his true philosophy centers on understanding human nature. When we apply his insights to attraction, we aren't playing games. We're learning how composure, self-awareness, and strategic behavior shape the way women respond at a subconscious level. Women are not drawn to mere charm or compliments. They are drawn to presence, depth, and quiet confidence. The man who understands himself, who chooses his words deliberately, and who reveals emotion with intention rather than impulse, becomes compelling. Machiavelli observed that control begins with the self. When you master your reactions, your attention, and your energy, you stop chasing approval, and others begin seeking yours. In relationships, this creates a powerful shift. Desire begins to flow toward the man who is centered, rather than the man who reaches. In this video, we will uncover 5 principles rooted in Machiavelli's writings and supported by modern psychology. Rules that transform you from someone who pursues affection into someone who inspires it. These principles are subtle, disciplined, and deeply effective when practiced with integrity. If you stay with me until the end, you'll understand how influence is not about force or persuasion, but about becoming the calm, self-driven presence that women crave and remember. Value creates desire. Machiavelli noted that people pursue what is scarce and overlook what is always available. Attraction works the same way. When a man does not recognize his own value, he overextends, overgives, and overexplains. And in doing so, he diminishes the very qualities that could have made him desirable. But when a man knows his worth, he becomes selective with his time, his attention, and his emotional openness. This scarcity naturally increases demand. A woman begins to feel that your presence is something that must be earned, not assumed. Value is communicated through behavior, not words. You show value when you maintain your routines, your passions, and your independent life, instead of allowing attraction to pull you out of alignment. You show value when you do not rush to reply, when you do not overreact, and when you do not abandon your standards just to keep someone interested. These actions send a clear message. My life is already full. Your presence is welcome, not needed. Women find this emotional independence deeply compelling because it communicates stability and confidence. On the psychological level, value activates the pursuit instinct. When something is not guaranteed, the mind becomes more interested, more attentive, and more invested. This is why men who chase are often dismissed, while men who remain grounded and self-contained are remembered. When you demonstrate that your affection is not automatic, you create space for her to show effort. And effort builds emotional attachment. In truth, value is not about playing hard to get. It is about being someone worth getting. When your identity is rooted in purpose, discipline, and calm self-respect, attraction happens naturally. You don't have to convince her to chase, and she will, because she senses the depth in you that most men never develop. The man who knows his own value becomes a prize, and women instinctively pursue what is rare. Reveal less, observe more. Machiavelli understood that information is power. Not in the sense of holding secrets, but in choosing what you share and when you share it. When a man reveals too much too quickly, he removes the mystery that fuels attraction. Women are drawn to what they must discover rather than what is handed to them openly. By speaking with intention instead of impulse, you create a natural sense of depth. Your silence becomes intriguing. Your words become meaningful, and your presence becomes something she wants to understand. Observation, on the other hand, allows you to see what most men miss. When you pay attention to tone, pacing, expressions, and emotional cues. You learn how she thinks and what she values, without needing to ask directly. Machiavellian strategy is not manipulation. It is awareness. You listen before speaking, evaluate before revealing, and understand before responding. This gives you precision. You can tailor your words, reactions, and boundaries to the emotional reality of the moment, rather than guessing blindly. Revealing less is not about withholding affection. It is about protecting your personal gravity. When you share slowly, you signal that your inner world is not something just anyone is invited into. That quiet boundary raises your perceived value. Women instinctively sense the difference between a man who speaks to be accepted and a man who speaks only when something matters. One seeks approval, the other commands respect. Ultimately, reveal less. Observe more is about cultivating presence and perception. You do not rush to explain yourself, impress, or prove. You remain steady, attentive, and difficult to read, not because you are hiding, but because you are self-contained. That is the kind of mystery that draws a woman in. It makes her lean forward. It makes her want to know more, and in that desire, the pursuit begins. Control your emotional responses. Machiavelli emphasized that the most powerful person in any interaction is the one who remains emotionally composed. In attraction, the man who controls his reactions immediately gains psychological advantage. When a woman sees that your mood does not shift based on her approval, attention, or unpredictability, she recognizes something rare: emotional independence. This steadiness communicates that you are guided by your own principles rather than external validation. Women are deeply responsive to this form of emotional control because it signals strength, maturity, and self-command, qualities tied to both respect and desire. Emotional control all rewires the dynamic of attention. When you are not reactive, you cannot be manipulated. You do not overpraise, overexplain, or overinvest. Instead, you listen, observe, and respond only when necessary. This creates a powerful sense of mystery and confidence. The woman begins to wonder what you are thinking, how you interpret her, and where you stand. And curiosity is the foundation of pursuit. By simply not reacting impulsively, you shift the emotional weight of the interaction onto her. This restraint does not mean suppressing emotion or acting distant. It means expressing only what is intentional and meaningful. A calm tone, slow speech, and deliberate movement are signals of someone who trusts himself. Instead of arguing, you clarify. Instead of defending, you state. Instead of proving yourself, you demonstrate through presence. This is the essence of Machiavellian influence, showing control without announcing it. Ultimately, controlling your emotional responses makes you the anchor in the interaction. While others get swept into insecurity, excitement, or anxiety, you remain grounded. That stability is magnetic. It makes you difficult to dismiss and impossible to forget. When you no longer react to emotional pressure, you become the one who sets the emotional tone, and the one women naturally move toward: power in silence and patience. Machiavelli understood that silence is not the absence of communication. It is a form of communication. When a man does not rush to fill every pause or explain every thought, he demonstrates control over himself and the moment. In attraction, silence holds emotional weight. A woman expects excitement, eagerness, even nervousness. But when she is met with calm, quiet confidence, she becomes more attentive. Silence draws her in. It creates a subtle tension where she wonders what you are thinking, how you perceive her, and what your inner world contains. This curiosity is the spark that opens the door to pursuit. Patience works closely with silence. When a man is patient, he shows that he is not driven by impulse or fear of loss. He is not trying to rush intimacy, conversations, or decisions. This patience communicates depth and emotional steadiness. Women feel safer, more curious, and more drawn to a man who moves slowly and intentionally. Patience also allows you to observe behavior patterns rather than reacting to isolated moments. You learn who she is, how she responds under pressure, and whether her actions align with her words. This awareness gives you clarity, and clarity prevents regret. Silence and patience also protect your value. Many men weaken their influence by reacting too quickly or revealing too much too soon. When you speak only when necessary and choose your timing deliberately, your words gain impact. Your presence becomes something she notices. Your absence becomes something she feels. You shift from being predictable to being compelling. Attraction thrives in this kind of emotional space, not rushed, not demanded, but allowed to grow. Ultimately, the power of silence and patience lies in what it represents. Self-command. A man who does not chase, does not rush, and does not seek reassurance becomes the emotional anchor in the dynamic. Women gravitate toward that anchor because it offers something rare: stability. When you master silence and patience, you become the man who cannot be moved by external shifts. And that immovable presence is unforgettable. Never chase. Let them approach. The final principle is the one that changes the dynamic of attraction completely. Do not chase. Chasing is an admission of emotional dependence. It communicates that your desire for her outweighs your value of yourself. When a man chases, he places the woman in a psychological position of higher importance, and the mind instinctively devalues what it does not have to earn. By contrast, when you remain composed, present, and self-directed, you allow her to feel the space where desire can grow. Women do not fall in love with what pursues them. They fall in love with what pulls them. Letting her approach does not mean ignoring or acting cold. It means creating emotional room for her to invest. You show interest through steady presence, meaningful eye contact, and thoughtful conversation, not through over-effort or pursuit. When she reaches out first, when she asks the next question, when she initiates the next moment, she becomes a participant rather than a receiver. This investment matters. Psychology shows that people value what they work for far more than what is simply offered to them. When she invests, she bonds. This dynamic also reveals authenticity. If she is genuinely interested, she will show it through her actions. Communication, initiative, softness, and proximity. If she does not show interest, the stoic response is not frustration. It is acceptance. You do not force attraction, you allow it to present itself. This posture of emotional clarity protects your peace and ensures that connection develops only where it is mutual. A man who does not chase communicates that his life is already stable, full, and meaningful. That is the type of man a woman wants to be a part of, not the man who abandons his center to follow her. In truth, the man who never chases does not need to. His strength, stability, and self-respect create a natural pull. Women lean toward him because being near him feels grounding, intriguing, and emotionally secure. The less you chase, the more space you create for desire to move toward you. And once she begins to approach, the dynamic shifts. Attraction becomes mutual, effort becomes shared, and connection becomes real. Attraction, desire, and emotional influence do not begin with strategy. They begin with discipline. Machiavelli's insights revealed that the most compelling men are those who know how to govern themselves before trying to shape the world around them. When you control your reactions, speak with intention, protect your value, and allow space for others to invest, you create a presence that quietly commands respect. Women are drawn to this not because it is forceful, but because it is rare. Most men chase, most men reveal too much, most men rush. The man who does none of these things stands out immediately. These principles are not about manipulation. They are about alignment. When your emotional life is anchored in confidence rather than approval, your actions become purposeful. You become someone who can be trusted, someone who is steady, someone who does not collapse under pressure or uncertainty. Women feel the difference. The emotional tone you hold shapes how others feel in your presence. If you are calm, they relax. If you are self-assured, they feel drawn in. Influence is not loud. It is quiet, intentional, and consistent. In the end, the power you seek is already within your control. It lives in your patience, your silence, your standards, and the way you carry your inner world. When you stop trying to be chosen, you begin to be noticed. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you remain grounded, you become the center others move toward. That is the essence of Machiavellian power. Not domination, but presence. The man who masters himself never needs to beg for attention. He becomes the one others seek.